Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived to a rousing reception in Mauritius on Tuesday. Despite his arrival in the early hours, he was welcomed by the country's top dignitaries, including the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Naveen Ramgoolam. On a two-day state visit to the island nation, Prime Minister Modi will participate as the chief guest in the 57th National Day celebrations of Mauritius. He will also engage with the Mauritian leadership and interact with the Indian diaspora. Ahead of the visit, Prime Minister Modi expressed optimism, stating that it would mark a new and bright chapter in India-Mauritius relations. So how will this visit elevate bilateral partnership between both countries? What are the new avenues of partnership that India and Mauritius seek to explore and collaborate in? We'll discuss this and much more with two eminent guests joining us on the program virtually. Delighted to have with us former Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He's a distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. Ambassador, always a pleasure to have you with us on the program on Sansad TV. Also joining us is Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs, and he's a foreign affairs expert. Professor, thank you for taking out time and joining us on this edition of Perspective. Ambassador, to you first. One of the highlights of this visit of the Prime Minister to Mauritius is that he will participate as the chief guest at the 57th National Day celebrations of Mauritius. Now, I recall, incidentally, when he was there last in 2015, then too he was the chief guest on the National Day in Mauritius. So, from then to now, it's been a gap of 10 years. How do you see our relationship with Mauritius having evolved?
I think that the fact that Prime Minister Modi is the chief guest this time, as well as he was the first time, it speaks for itself, even though there is a decade-long intervention. But I believe that relationship has continued to grow, and it has become far more significant in the context of the changing geopolitical landscape. Mauritius is a strategic country. It is a historic partner, civilizational partner. We all know that about 70% of the people are of Indian origin. Right. Mauritius population. It has been one of the largest source of investments. A lot of countries routed their investments through Mauritius because of the kind of treaty that we had with them. But that made it very, very important. India has been a first responder to this country and to the region all along. It's a very important partner for us in the Indian Ocean region. So Prime Minister Modi's visit in this context acquires a greater significance when he says that we are going to write a new chapter. So this is a relationship which is based on mutual trust. Besides, you know that the Prime Minister, Naveen Ramgoolam, he's the Labour Party, his party recently won the landslide election. So it will also provide both the leaders an opportunity to chart out a new roadmap for how we are going to go forward. Right. One of the most important things that India has always stood openly against the stand of UK and USA was in the context of Chagos Island. And that's why when the Chagos Island deal was finalized earlier in the last year, everybody said that this is the true decolonization of Mauritius that has happened. So I think from that point of view, and if you put all the boxes, then you will find that the relationship is moving forward. We are one of the largest, or rather the largest provider of the assistance, capacity building, infrastructure development and all that. Hundreds of projects which are there, high impact projects that are going on. People understand that. IORA Secretariat is located there. World Healthy Secretariat is also located. All these projects which India has been funding in these places. So I think that this is a relationship. This will be reiteration of our commitment to the security and development of a very important strategic partner.
Okay, Professor, we'll discuss the specific items on the agenda, some of the key agreements that are slated to be signed when, the Prime Minister meets the top leadership of Mauritius. But first, your initial thoughts on how pivotal this visit of the Prime Minister is. The Ambassador reiterated how it's sort of a celebration of the deep and long-standing ties that we share between the two countries. And that was, in a way, reaffirmed by the rousing reception that the Prime Minister received upon his arrival in a special special gesture. We've been seeing the visuals coming in from Mauritius since morning, that the Prime Minister of Mauritius, he was accompanied with around 200 dignitaries, which included the MPs, the MLAs, the members of the diplomatic corps and several others who were there to welcome Prime Minister Modi, despite the fact that his arrival was quite in the early hours. So talk to us about the significance of this visit of the Prime Minister to Mauritius, especially in context of the current era of geopolitical churn and the uncertainty, something that the ambassador also spoke about.
Yeah, Teena, this country is obviously very close to us because we are related by blood. Our diaspora is there. It's one of the what is called the Girmitia, immigrant communities there that went in the 19th century, who trace their roots back to current day Bihar in India. So emotionally and culturally, they're very close. And Prime Minister mentioned actually that the Bhojpuri language that is spoken there, and the way it's been preserved, and also the way they celebrate the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and all our epics and all the major festivals of India there, it just makes you feel like there is a civilizational India beyond just the geographical boundaries of India. So Mauritius is critical, and also because it's in the sea lanes of communication and western end of the Indian Ocean, it's very significant. And a few years ago, we had an agreement to develop their Agalega Islands, and our armed forces, our agencies have been working very closely to build their maritime domain awareness and coastal surveillance capabilities. And it's not a coincidence that armed forces contingent will be doing a fly past and a march during the Mauritius National Day from India. So Prime Minister's presence means that we support this state, and like Ambassador Trigunayat was saying, whether there is a turnover of power or not, we've been able to maintain our bipartisan support in that country. It's a little bit different from Maldives, which is also a neighbor in the same region of the western side of Indian Ocean, where there is a so-called pro-India or anti-India factions, and they keep coming in, going out. In Mauritius, we maintained it a lot better. And it doesn't matter who comes in or goes out, they are always pro-India. And we have done a lot for them. There's so many, the social housing projects we are delivering for them, the maritime support, the security assistance. And even during crisis, I remember a few years back, there was the oil slick. And it was actually Indian forces that went and helped clean up the oil slick. Some of these small island nations, really lack capacities. And the SIDCs, as they call, small island developing countries. And Mauritius is one among them. And we have given it very high priority as part of our neighborhood first and extended neighborhood first policies. So I think we have actually lived up to the expectation. That's why there's such an overwhelming welcome for Prime Minister Modi. He has really lived up to the the promise of India being the net security provider, being the first responder, being the sentinel of the Indian Ocean, and making sure that our own security interests in that part of the ocean are also covered. So it's a win-win situation, because Maldives get a lot of development assistance and it improves its connectivity. It's an archipelago. Sorry, I'm talking of Mauritius. Gets the archipelago is connected, and on the other hand, we are able to also make sure that Chinese intrusions in that region are under check, and we keep a close watch on what they're doing on the western flank of India. So I think overall, it's a success story of Indian foreign policy, and worth nurturing and carefully sustaining, because some of these small countries, Prime Minister has said that these may be small island nations, but they are, big oceanic countries. So they are important in their own right, and we pay attention to the smallest of countries and give them respect and equality, and that's why they love us so much.
You're right, Ambassador, taking on from where Dr. Chaulia left at, Mauritius holds a special place in Prime Minister Modi's heart. In fact, I just came across an article today which talked about his connection dating back to Mauritius 27 years when he was the General Secretary of the BJP, and he had first gone to Mauritius to address the Ramayana conference. And even as Prime Minister in 2015, when he had gone there, he had referred to it as mini India. Today also he called his reception by the Indian community as a memorable one, and especially the Geet Gawe performance that he was greeted with. Talk to us about, the significance of this deep rooted cultural connect that we have with Mauritius, also the robust people-to-people ties. We know that the people of Indian origin community comprise 70% of the population, but in sort of, strengthening the India-Mauritius relationships, what critical role and how they have been solidifying our relationship over the decades?
One of the professor mentioned about Bhojpuri, and today, if you had been following, the Prime Minister himself has tweeted in Bhojpuri
Yes.
About his visit and the reception that he got. Likewise, I saw our spokesman, Randeep Jaiswal, was also actually commented in Bhojpuri. So this is the kind of connect that shows you the respect for each other, the deeper connectivity through linguistic and cultural connect. That is extremely important. And, if you ever go to the PBD conferences, you will find the largest delegation, over 1,000 people always come from Mauritius. So it is something that shows that they feel so close to India. Despite that, they maintain their identity. They are very proud of their new language, Creole and whatever. But at the same time, the connect with India is very robust. And for Prime Minister Modi, he generally has excellent relations with every place where he goes. The diaspora loves him. The political leaders love him. And he has tremendous connect with everyone. That's his, I think, the USP of Prime Minister Modi. But at the same time, I believe that he is genuinely interested, and this is also very strategically we have to look at it. It is not merely just a visit for the sake of it, because whenever we invite somebody as a chief guest on the National Day or Republic Day, it conveys a message: you are more special than some other special friends. Now that clearly continues, and this is what is being indicated. There are large number of agreements and others will be signed, which is the standard protocol, and especially more capacity building assistance and LOCs, etc., which will further solidify. Now you have, as I mentioned earlier, World Hindi Secretariat. So therefore, everything is moving from that dimension. Mahatma Gandhi Library, there's some Rajiv Gandhi, etc. So nearly in every field of a day-to-day existence in the region, India is involved in one way or the other through its assistance, and which is what is recognized very well by the Mauritian people. Whenever you talk to them, you find relating to them as if you are talking to your closest cousin. That is how the relationship really moves, and India stands by them at all the time. More importantly, on their sovereignty, which they have always respected, that India's stand, despite our relationship with UK and USA, we have supported very openly in every forum with regard to the sovereignty of the Chagos Island.
Right. Professor, we are connected through history, through geography, culture with Mauritius. But another key pillar of our strengthened partnership today is the development cooperation that India extends to Mauritius. So let's now delve a little about how India has undertaken several economic development, capacity building initiatives in this island nation. We also understand that the Prime Minister is scheduled to inaugurate a few projects that have been implemented there with Indian assistance. Tell us about the kind of assistance that India has provided to Mauritius, some important ones. We call Mauritius a key partner in the Indian Ocean region, and also how particularly this visit of the Prime Minister to Mauritius will further enhance the scope and the scale of the development cooperation that we have with Mauritius.
Yeah, our approach has always been to consult with the partner countries and ask them what are their core developmental needs, and accordingly we tailor make. We don't go from outside saying that you should be pursuing this model or that model for economic growth and for livelihoods and for sustainability and so on. So in this case, it's been a consultative process all along, and some of the iconic, for example, projects, for example, the metro connection. These island nations, archipelagos, they don't have large, easy means for linking from one island to the other. And there are some huge distances, maritime distances. So you actually need to, build bridges literally, right, and to do connectivity. So that projects, India has taken the lead in Mauritius, and people appreciate that all the time. Second, social housing. See, and there's always a need in lower income countries to help and raise their affordability of housing and such things. So India has been involved in a lot of these. We've done that also in the Maldives. We've done that in Sri Lanka, and we also do it in the Maldives, in Mauritius. They're all interconnected as part of our broader strategy to the Western Indian Ocean. Seychelles is another one. So they all form like a quadrangle. Now, there is also so much we have done in terms of education and information technology and skilling and passing on our capabilities in healthcare. So it's a complete spectrum, even I think with the policing, their law and order, our forces have been there advising them. Right from the time of independence from Britain, India has played a role of a kind of like a protector of the Maldives, of Mauritius, sorry, and therefore I think they know this, and it's an intergenerational thing. But now we are trying to scale up. We are committing more resources to Mauritius, and we do understand its value in terms of the India's growing, power projection capabilities. Also, it's off the east coast of Africa, and in fact, Prime Minister Modi has said that Mauritius is the gateway to Africa for us. So it's the western end of Indian Ocean, and there's Madagascar next after that. So all these countries matter a lot to consolidate our influence and to also be a big player in that region. So I think we are keeping these in mind, and many of the core people-centric development works we do there maintain our goodwill and that bipartisan support that I mentioned earlier. And it is through this only that India is able to, tide over whatever domestic political changes or upheavals occur in these small island countries. Right. So India remains a big player, and it cannot be underestimated, and that's what we are showing through this far-sighted approach.
Okay. Ambassador, from development cooperation, let's talk about commercial relations. What is the kind of trade relations that we have with Mauritius? Also, Professor talked about how it's significant for India because we keep saying Mauritius is the gateway to Africa. I recall having read that this was the first country in Africa with which India signed a trade agreement as well. So how has that trade agreement, the SECPA, impacted, also benefited both sides? Where do we stand today?
Well, thank you. And I think Professor touched upon a very important dimension of our relationship. Because for us, Africa is extremely important. And Mauritius has been also asking us that we can be the gateway of Africa for the main continent. And therefore, it is important to do that. Now, in Africa, there are a lot of developments that are taking place. One of the most important development is integration of the markets. That is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And in which, since we already have the SECPA that you mentioned with Mauritius, it will make easier for us to launch from Mauritius into some parts of Africa. And that is what is going to be an additional points of discussion, I think, between our delegations this time. Of course, our trade is close to about less than $1 billion, both ways trade. India supplies, energy supplies are the largest export items, as you know, between the two countries. But our trade, because Mauritius is a small economy, a small country, therefore directly you can't, but the transshipment, that would be very, very important for that. Today, India exports roughly about $780 million worth of goods and imports about $75 million worth of imports from there. But it has also become a very important conduit of investments into India. You'll be surprised, for many years, Mauritius used to be number one as far as investment destination is concerned. But most of the companies used to take advantage of the special treaty that we used to have with Mauritius, and nearly $177 billion, I believe, had come to India, which was more than a quarter of the total investments that have come to India since 2001. So I think that it plays in that sense very much. And Indian companies are also investing there. I mean, that's very important. All the major Indian multinational companies, the public sector undertakings, they are all present, and I believe that our investment is over $200 million in the last few years also. So I think that we need to be, this SECPA has done very well, and what the reports are coming in, that it has helped grow the basket and help them also export to other countries as well. So this is something I believe doing well. Yeah.
Okay. Professor, another dimension that I would very quickly like to touch upon is the maritime security and defense cooperation, because it was here in Mauritius back in 2015 that the Prime Minister had articulated the vision of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region, underscoring India's commitment to the Indian Ocean region. So tell us and our viewers about how since the Sagar vision was announced, how have we expanded the scope of maritime security and defense cooperation with Mauritius, because it's the gateway to Africa, but at the same time it's also one of the critical players and in India's important partner in the Indian Ocean region.
Yeah, I think there are two dimensions here. One is just building their coastal, surveillance and monitoring capabilities to police their own exclusive economic zone. I mean, a small island nation doesn't have the capabilities. So India has stepped up on that front. And secondly, there's a lot of overfishing going on in the Indian Ocean region by Chinese trawlers, what they call IUU fishing, illegal, unregulated and unrestricted fishing. So there are certain areas where their livelihoods are at stake due to Chinese presence and prowling in that region. The Chinese are also using that to that space of the Western Indian Ocean to make forays on our western coast and to also observe and to spy upon what we are doing. So I think there are a lot of areas where Mauritius understands our sensibilities and sensitivities, and they have accommodated our needs. And on the other hand, we are also making sure that they remain capable to defend themselves. There have been attempted, possible military coups there in the past. Some decades ago. We are concerned about political stability in that region also, and we make sure that the regimes are moderate and secular and are following a path that is in the broader interest of the Indian Ocean region. So I would say our Mauritius strategy is part of a larger Indian Ocean strategy, and it's an example of how a big country like India can actually take along a small country with a sense of equality and respect.
Okay. Master, I'll take one last question because the clock is ticking away, but we don't know about the key agreements and the details of these agreements that will be signed. But according to reports, and something that the MEA has also spoken about, is the Indian Navy and Mauritius authorities are set to sign a technical agreement on exchanging information on white shipping. Now tell us about how it's going to enhance maritime security, bolster regional cooperation, especially in the context of real-time sharing of data. How does it benefit both sides?
You know that India is also the first responder in the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
Especially with regard to the anti-piracy. And, when the Houthi, this thing happened, that time India deployed nearly about 22 ships to provide security and escort to the large number of the commercial shipping in that region. And therefore, the white shipping agreement will also help both sides in that. India is providing not only assistance, but the ships and all that to Mauritius to help their own exports in that sense. But one of the key agreements, I believe, are going to be, there are many agreements that are going currently, which Prime Minister apparently is going to inaugurate. One is the Civil Services College, and the Civil Services College, which will, of course, the key to the governance is also the civil services, and they keep coming and training here, but then this will also help in growing our relationship to a great extent at this level. The Forensic Science Laboratory, then you have the healthcare. There are many of these proposals that are there, Police Academy and all that. So I think that this is going to be, this is what Prime Minister is going to inaugurate during the visit. And we heard that apparently there will be a 200 million or more line of credit that will be given for the pipelines or something that to be needed by Mauritius. So whatever, this is just an incremental support to strengthening the Mauritian economy and its polity as well as society.
You're right. So we already have a wonderful relationship with Mauritius. We discussed how we share a historical and cultural connect, but at the same time, this pivotal visit of the Prime Minister is going to now add another dimension in terms of elevating the partnership that India and Mauritius have. So we'll keep an eye on the kind of agreements that are signed and some of the crucial meetings that the Prime Minister is set to hold with the top leadership of Mauritius. But with that, I'll have to wrap up the program. Time allows me to take up only that much on this edition of Perspective. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Professor, for your valuable time and your valuable insights. Thank you once again for joining us on the program. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well. That's it from us.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.